Hello, I'm Fram, the brother from California.
And I'm Greg, the serious brother from New York.
And I'm Geoff, the brother brought in to boost the ratings.
And welcome to Brothers Talking Tech. So we're going to start off today with a little Jeopardy. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Billed as the most influential tech event in the world, this event featuring gizmos and gadgets has been held in Las Vegas since 1978.
Let me guess. Greg, maybe you better take it.
Consumer Electronics Show.
Wrong.
CES.
Wrong. You guys didn't word it as a question. So
what is CES?
What is CES? Exactly. So Geoff, what was your number one thing that kind of hit you at CES?
So, I'm kind of a power user. I've been a road warrior a long time. Cell phones, laptops, that's kind of my world. The two products that stood out for me were the Asus ZenBook. It's a foldable 17-inch. It kind of intrigued me a little bit. It's not available quite yet, but something I might actually take a look at. The other thing, of course, was the Samsung Galaxy Fold. I don't know if you remember, but in the old days, they used to have these foldable clamshells. This has a screen on the outside, folds open, has a big screen. Something else I'll probably take a look at.
Very cool. Very cool. What about you, Greg?
Well, gaming for this engineer. And Moore's Law shows just what's possible. NVIDIA coming out with a full ray tracing GeForce RTX graphics card, the 3050. And on the processor side, Intel announcing their 12th generation H processors. So both of these really demonstrating the power of node shrinking and the ability to offer more function. So pretty impressive on both fronts.
Yeah, I got to mention, a lot of the articles now are frankly mudslinging between Intel and AMD, and of course NVIDIA on the side. A lot of interesting quotes coming out in the press, something to watch.
Absolutely. Competition's great. It drives innovation.
For sure. My big thing coming out of CES was the automotive announcements. Mercedes-Benz, first one to a level 3 autonomous driving. For those not familiar, you have level 0 all the way up to level 5, level 5 being a completely autonomous vehicle, no steering wheel, etc. So we're at level 3, but it's going to take a long time because it's not linear. It takes a lot of work going up each level. By the way, question for you guys. Where did you first learn to drive? Where did Dad take you to learn how to drive?
Parking lot.
For me, it was actually a cemetery. Dad took me to a cemetery, which reminds me of the story of the guy who drives into the cemetery and all of a sudden the GPS says you've reached your final destination. Okay, let's keep going. BMW iX Flow, they have this e-ink technology that allows the car to change color dynamically. So you can go from black to white or anything in between. And I think the other battle that's brewing in the autonomous vehicle realm is the approach that car makers are taking to autonomous driving. So you have Tesla, for example, whose approach is completely based on cameras and camera sensing. And just about every other automobile company is doing some combination of cameras with LiDAR, which is a laser-based technology. The camera-only approach is simpler. The camera plus LiDAR is more complex, but potentially has the benefit of producing more information and better information for autonomous driving. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Just to add that equation, there's some startups looking at ground penetrating radar that actually goes down in the ground. You can envision maybe having a buried wire or something that the ground penetrating radar senses. So it knows exactly where it is. Even if it can't see the lines on the road, it knows where it is.
Yeah, I think just in general, the amount of technology and innovation in all three of these areas, gaming, automotive, computing. Clearly, it's a big area and focus right now for companies, and we saw that in CES.
Still going strong after all these years.
Yeah, very true. All right, let's switch gears a little bit, because also over the last couple of weeks, there have been a few things in the news of note. The first has been this 5G snafu that's been going on with the potential interference between 5G and airplane altimeters. And I think as a result of that, some of the 5G operators, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mo, they've delayed some of their 5G rollouts until this can be studied a little bit more here in the US.
Yeah, this holds special interest, of course, for us as ham radio operators, but particularly for me, it almost caught me. I was overseas and I came very close to having my flight canceled because of this and getting stuck in Singapore. Essentially, the issue is the radar altimeters that certain models of planes use, particularly the 777, which is one of the major long-haul international planes, has a radar altimeter that uses a certain frequency band that are used for autopilot landings. And they were designed a long time ago and not really built for the current frequency usage of a lot of other things. The 5G band, the C-band, part of 5G, I should add, is in a band that's lower in frequency, separated, but the concern was whether the radar altimeter design was good enough to reject the interference from those 5G towers that are typically placed everywhere, including near airports.
This reminds me of our very early ham radio days and all of the issues we had around the 15 meter 21 megahertz band,
which would cause interference right on channel 3,
the old channel 3
the local channel that everyone watched.
Exactly. And all the things that we had to do. So I think, you're right. It's going to take some combination of better filters on the airplane side, some consideration for the frequency separation between what 5G is operating on and the altimeter is operating on, and antenna beaming and placement. So for example, the 5G towers that are going to be near airports, they may have to arrange the antennas such that they're either beaming away from the antenna from the airplanes or pointing in another direction. So
this whole situation example though, how technology and let me call it the political environment can interact. The FAA has responsibility for airline safety. FCC has responsibility for radio communications and safety. And there's actually a separate committee that is almost a volunteer committee responsible for radio communications in aeronautics. It was their report that kicked off all of this. It was some lab experiment. Did they do field experiments? So when people ask why did this come up at the last minute, frankly, it was because people didn't wrestle with this early enough. And I'm sure they'll work their way through it. In Europe and Asia and other places, they probably did their due diligence. We probably should not have had this happen here. I'm sure we'll get it fixed.
Yeah, I'm sure too. And obviously, I'll point out, right, there's big money behind this. The three operators here in the US, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mo, collectively spent over $80 billion to get the license rights to operate in this new frequency band. And of course, they've deployed a lot of hardware and antennas. So they're anxious to turn it on so that they can actually get their return for all of this money. So I agree with you. I think eventually they will work it out. Second item, and this is kind of hot off the press last few days. It looks like the House of Representatives passed a version of the CHIP Act. I'm going to turn that over to Greg, maybe, and you tell us a little bit more about that.
You recall last year, the Senate passed their version of the CHIPS Act. This was a $52 billion piece of legislation aimed at improving the environment for domestic production of semiconductors. So the House delivered its version just this last week. Needless to say, as is often the case in Washington, the two versions are quite different. And so now the legislation moves to the Reconciliation Committee, where they're going to essentially have to really, through the political process, come up with what priorities they want to put on this $52 billion, whether it's going to be focused on manufacturing or more focused on research and development. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I do have in common is it looks like they both were 52 billion in size, right? So
yes.
And obviously, if they can work out the differences, send it to the president, he signs it, then it goes into appropriations. And we talked about this, Greg, in a earlier podcast, right? The 52 billion. If you look at some of the Asian countries, I think they're spending.
Well, this is 52 billion against in Asia, what is probably close to 250 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
Announced investment across the Asian geo.
Well, good. We covered a lot today, and I want to thank you all for listening to Brothers Talking Tech. Please let us know what you think of today's session and what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Goodbye, stay safe, and say well.